Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I have Vivek with me. Vivek is the co-founder of Gitcoin, which is making it easier to fund open source projects, and it enables many open source projects and people who are working on open source projects to monetize their workings. So hi Vivek, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Awesome. So can you give a brief introduction of what is Gitcoin?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Gitcoin is a mission to grow open source software, and it fits in between the Web3 and blockchain space and the open source space, which has quite a strong intersection. And that's kind of the mission behind Gitcoin. What it is functionally is it's a platform where open source projects can post bounties on any open GitHub issues. And Gitcoin is a place where open source developers hang out and are able to find these issues and thus contribute to projects in that manner. So that's kind of the short story on Gitcoin.
Okay. So how did actually Gitcoin begin, and how did you get involved with it?
Sure, yeah. So Gitcoin was started first and foremost by Kevin Owocki, who started the project, I believe, in the middle of last year, and it launched to mainnet shortly thereafter in the October-November timeframe. And I joined in January alongside three other team members. So I came in an operational role. We had Elisa March start, and she was product lead, and backend engineer joined. And that kind of has become the quote-unquote co-founding team. And what I did at first was a lot more of just laying out the vision behind what Gitcoin is and the reason why we think it's a great time for Gitcoin to exist. And since then, I've transitioned into more and more operational aspects, including trying to get more and more people using Gitcoin.
Okay, I get it. So let's talk about like the whole open source space in general. So what are some issues that you see, especially in the funding space of open source projects that exist currently?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so in the traditional open source space, I've been lucky to learn from quite a few people, including Kevin Owocki, the founder of Gitcoin, Eric Berry on the Gitcoin team, who's launched a project called Code Fund, and many others just in the ecosystem, including Nadia from Protocol Labs. They kind of put forth the current state of things, which is that you have maintainers who, once they have projects that get to a critical mass, are now overloaded with issues that are difficult for them as sole or a small team of maintainers to take care of, especially for a project that began as perhaps a labor of love without any real source of funding. And they kind of are stuck in the middle of two places, which is that A, their open source work may be the most impactful work that they work on, but B, it is the hardest work to monetize. And so that's traditionally, I think, been the problem and continues to be a problem that we think about deeply at Bitcoin. But we're also very interested in a paradigm shift that's occurring in the blockchain space. So in the blockchain space, with protocols like Bitcoin and Ethereum being open source at the base layer, and the money or the value of Ether and Bitcoin also accruing at that layer, you have the system where the open protocol inherently has value, and that value can then be distributed amongst its community, amongst contributors, amongst maintainers, in a way that in traditional open source has been much more difficult to do. And so that's kind of why we think this is a good time for Gitcoin to exist and bring that.
Okay, so what exactly is why is it difficult for traditional open source to distribute the wealth?
Yeah, I think there's just a misalignment of incentives. You have these maintainers who create projects that are used by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions in many cases. But there are not systems in place for these projects to monetize that use. So Code Fund launched with that in mind, which is a project that Eric Berry is working on, which basically allows for a small ethical advertisement that is an open source, usually to another open source project. You put an advertisement up on your repo, and you then get some sort of allocation of funding for the amount of people that are coming to your repo. But that unfortunately was shut down on the GitHub side of things, but has still kind of been moved forward by people putting it on websites and in other ways. But it's still a tricky problem. There's licenses, there's subscriptions, there's these advertisements. All of these are models that have been put forth, but it still becomes tricky when there's no money at the base layer to support these.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, how are you tackling that? What's your thought process and your mental model of like tackling this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a part of it, I think, is that we understand that we're sitting in a space within which we're kind of riding a new wave where, for example, on the Gitcoin issue explorer, you may find $10,000 to $20,000 worth of open issues that are for the Ethereum Foundation's repositories. And this is a value-aligned open source project, which also is monetarily able to support itself because of the valuation of ETH and the way that the project is set up from the base layer to include that monetization strategy. So the theory is that Gitcoin is just sitting in between and allowing now open source projects that have funding and developers that are looking to do work on these open source projects to both benefit from this new paradigm where there are funders who actually do have capital to deploy, and there are developers who would love to work more in open source, but have traditionally, it's been tricky to do so unless it's on a volunteer basis. So now you have a system where each side is able to be properly compensated for the work that they do.
And like we have like freelancing sites like Upwork and freelancer.com. So like, don't you think like if someone is posting a project, they can like post it on Freelancer and say like solve this issue on GitHub, something like that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. And I think we would bet that Gitcoin offers a slightly easier experience, given that there's a native integration with GitHub, and the two are more tightly coupled than using Upwork to solve a GitHub issue. So that's kind of in our view, we're catering a lot of what Gitcoin is to the open source development community, and the fact that we're focused very, very clearly on that space is, I think, what differentiates us from some of those potential competitors.
Yeah. And I think there's another point that on open source projects, like we see so many like stars and folks, and many people are watching that and they would like to contribute. But like if on a freelancer or some third party site, it is difficult to get this mass developer community there.
Right. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of overlap between the people that are coming on Gitcoin to do work and the people that are looking at the stars on GitHub. And for example, we had an issue posted on Raiden the other day, which was a good first issue, something that was open for contributions. And the person who picked it up, he commented and said, "I've been looking at Raiden for months and trying to find a way to contribute." So I was very excited to see this. So I could make a contribution. So it was natively already something that these people did.
Okay, so can you walk us down through the process of posting a bounty, like on the website? Can you walk us down that?
Sure. So I'll share my screen in order to do this. I have pulled up our fund issue page, and this is where you would type in an issuer URL specifically to a GitHub issue, and then eventually associate a certain dollar amount in ETH or in any ERC20 token that you could then fund, and that issue would get posted on the issuing floor. So I'm going to pull up a sample GitHub issue. Here is one that we've been working on called Gitcoin requests. I posted here in the issue URL. As you can see, the issue title, description, some keywords, all of that kind of pulls in through GitHub. And then you can set how long you think this should take, if it's a beginner task. And then you can also put an approval on it. So say, I will approve the person who will work on this issue, or you can say, hey, anyone can work on this if you have the appropriate skills. There's a few different types, but for the purposes of the demo, we'll do the traditional type. And then you have this dollar amount that you can associate. So this is in ETH, and as you can see, depending on what you think it could be worth, it'll tell you how much the dollar amount is, and it'll give you a proxy for what the hourly rate is, for what this would look like. If you think it's going to take 6 hours of work, you'd be paying $40 an hour, and that's kind of the minimum bar that we try to benchmark at, so that developers on the platform are getting paid kind of a fair rate. So that's our pricing guide, and we're there. Then you just agree to the terms of service, and then click Fund Issue. I'm not going to go through the full flow, but generally here what happens is once you click Fund Issue, you receive a MetaMask confirmation, you confirm that, and then your ETH, in this case, this is 5 ETH, would get staked in a smart contract, which when an issue is submitted, or excuse me, when somebody submits work, they also make a claim on that smart contract. And once I decide as the funder, or eventually as the community decides, or a commit is processed, that funding then gets paid out to that individual.
Okay, and who decides that? Like say, like this, I had this question as well. Like say if you posted some bounty, and if a contributor wrote some code and it actually solved that, but the bounty the person who had posted the bounty was like, no, this hasn't been resolved.
Fair. Yeah, good question. Yeah, so at this point, it is at the discretion of the funder first. So that funder has eventually the final say in whether or not to pay out. But what we've seen is that through GitHub and through Gitcoin's kind of innate reputation, you haven't seen that many cases where an individual believes that they should be paid out, but a funder is for whatever reason withholding payment. There is more that there is to be done there, and so I'll talk about that because we want to think more about that. One would be paying out immediately upon a commit, when a commit is merged in to the code base. That could be an obvious way that programmatically somebody gets paid out, but also there's looking at arbitration, these edge cases where an individual for whatever reason disagrees with the decision not to pay out. And then I think really more, because out of, say, let's see, on the platform so far, there's been 394 issues that have been completed. There's probably been a handful, 5 or 6 edge cases. One of the things we try to encourage for people posting is a very clear acceptance criteria, so that both the funder and the developer are both on the same page as to what is needed to get this across.
Mm-hmm. So like, are you exploring like something like for these cases, usually we have things like token voting and community voting,
Right.
and like getting, yeah, that is one thing that people do. So are you exploring things like that?
Yes. There's a project, Mark Balin, who is the creator of the Bounties network, as well as Mike Golden, who is the creator of AdChain. They have a project they're working on called Delphi, which is inherently a token-based arbitration system, by which if anything does get to an arbitration state, you have the ability basically to stake tokens on either outcome, and depending on whether you're on the right end of that outcome that eventually gets voted upon, you either get paid out or lose your deposit. I'm probably missing out on quite a bit of the nuance, but that's Delphi, and they have a paper that they've released on that.
Yeah, actually, I'd interviewed a civil team last time, and I think they have this economic incentive. They have thought about that quite a lot. So you might want to talk to them as well, because
Cool.
because in their like newsroom they have this feature, like if someone is putting out bad content, they their lockup that they put. The stake of tokens that they've put, they might they that would get lost if the
I
community
see.
if the community decides that this is bad content, and and the people who decide vote for that this is bad content, and it eventually gets kicked out, they get rewarded as well. So yeah.
Got it. Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we should check on what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you like also show us like how one sample bounty looks like, and like people contributing to a sample bounty? I was following your Medium as well. You were posting bounties with, I think, Uport and various organizations.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's see if I can find a good one. All of these are completed, so we should be able to see them through to the final state. So here's one. This is probably our biggest bounty and one that we're proud of. So this is offering loans powered by Dharma that was put up by Rick Burton of the Balance team.
Yeah.
So essentially, what's available here is Balance was trying to create an integration with Dharma, and Rick Burton put up the design spec for what this should look like. Essentially, collateralized loans where you could either borrow DAI by locking up ETH or borrow ETH by locking up DAI. He had set up the full front end and then basically put up 6 ETH as a bounty for this to be done. So we'll look at this. This is where once Rick put this up on Gitcoin, it also had an issue posted by Gitcoin bot that associated with that on their GitHub comment tree, added some additional details, some definitions of done, and then some reviewers. And obviously provided these great mock-ups. And then Travis D. Mathis, the bounty hunter that worked on this and eventually took it through to the done state. And he talked to Rick Burton on Slack about this. He started work. Then he started commenting on the thread, gave like an update on how this is done. So finished the UX and UI, he plans to spend more time with Dharma. He gets all the way through. Nadav gets excited. He's the co-founder of Dharma. So he is now involved with this in terms of the integration. And then by the end of the week, Travis submitted a PR and Rick Burton paid him out for that PR. So I think I went through that relatively quickly. So please do let me know if I lost you, but that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I think you went it fine. Like, I just wanted the audience to get an overview of how it looks like. So yeah, that is fine. And finally, how did it like? Can you show like how it was done and finally?
Sure. So the actual output, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think on this specific one, it would have to be. Let me see if I can find the. Here, I guess would be the final step. Sorry, share my screen again. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be the checklist and the current progress. I think that eventually, basically, this would be merged into the code base, and then it would become live on Balance. I think right now on this specific issue, it's not live yet, but in many of the cases, when you get to the work done state, the commit is merged in, and you can go to the website and it's live on the platform.
Okay. And if someone is posting a bounty, is there a time limit as well? Like say, because I don't want my ETH or DAI to get locked up forever.
Correct. Yeah. So like in the open status right now, we have 48 issues and you'll see these expiration dates. So yes, in like 7 days or 29 days or 6 days, depending on what the individual states, be able to basically determine your expiration date, and then you can claw back the funds.
Okay. Yeah, I think the audience would definitely have gotten an idea of how the platform works. So can you talk about some like partnerships and how you are trying to drive adoption for Gitcoin?
Sure, absolutely. So Yeah, we're really excited about this. We sense that, especially at the Ethereum infrastructure level, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of interested developers who would like to get involved. And so, as of recent, we've kicked off 3 partnerships to this end. One with the Ethereum Foundation, we received a $25,000 grant to work with them. Started a $10,000 partnership with MakerDAO to post bounties denominated in DAI, which is their stablecoin. And then the Ethereum Community Fund, we've also launched a $5,000 pilot project to post bounties. So none of this funding and this grant money goes anywhere but directly to bounties. So essentially, we're looking at $40,000 in bounties that can be put out at anywhere in the infrastructure level, and we've already started deploying that. So some bounties that we've put up with that include on the Solidity repo, on Casper FFG, on Zeppelin OS, on Geth, Parity, CPP Ethereum. So essentially anything at the infrastructure level, bounty by bounty, we're looking to just put work out there in the ecosystem that people need help with and get more developers involved.
And like this is more of a crypto community effort right now. Most of the bounties are for crypto projects. Do you see that Gitcoin will expand to more open source projects as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely on the roadmap and in the thought process. I think we have a sense that we're building in this community right now, and there's a lot of work to be done. And as a result, we really would like to stay focused in the short term, but in the intermediate to long term, most definitely, open source growing is the general thesis behind Gitcoin existing. Finding ways to do that more broadly is definitely what we want to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have covered quite a lot, and we have the audience would definitely have gotten an idea and your future roadmap. So yeah, do you have anything to share for developers or entrepreneurs?
No, not much. Just come hang out on Gitcoin Slack. Check out the issue explorer. See if there's any way that external contributors can get involved in your repo, and we'd be happy to try to send that your way. So thank you for taking the time. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Vivek.